Hello everyone. Welcome back to our knowledge clips about your writing assignments. So today we're going to be covering the introduction and how to get started with this section of your writing assignment. So section number 1. Let's go ahead and get started. So firstly, just to quickly recap, the introduction, I would recommend that it is around, I would say 400 words. I know I said 200 to 400 last time, but 200 may be a little bit too short. So around 400 words is good for the introduction. And the introduction's main purpose is essentially to introduce the topic or goal of the essay. So the biggest or most crucial element of your introduction is presenting your central or research question. So essentially this is all about what angles you want to focus on regarding the policy implementation of your assignment, and also from what perspective are you taking, what are your criteria in terms of, more specifically what you're focusing on. And the most important is, why are you focusing on this? So make your reader understand why your focus is what it is. So just to really briefly recap the assignment, the main things that we want to note is that there are a couple of factors that governments need to consider before implementing a policy. So fairness, effectiveness, acceptability, etc. And essentially you want to consider one of the above factors when it comes to policy implementation and policy consideration, and essentially understand the extent to which A, we should study this further to get a better understanding, and B, the extent to which this maybe has an impact or plays a role in policy implementation regarding things that lead to negative climate change. So this is the main focus, or the general kind of bare bones cue for your research question. But of course, I would recommend that it goes a little bit more specific than this, so that you're able to actually tackle it and answer the question in 2,000 words. One thing that is really important to note is that the introduction should be very objective, of course, as just academic writing is in general. It should be very objective, and you should, again, present facts and limit opinion statements. So for the structure of the introduction, you have 4 essentially main parts that you have for your introduction. So that is going to be your rationale, which is essentially a combination of background presentation and problem identification. Then you have your central question, you have your research method, and then the structure of your paper. So first thing that you do is, of course, present the background. So introducing the issue or introducing an ongoing development, any sort of summary statistics, anecdotes from interviews, and so on. So what has been going on, let's say, with your chosen factor, fairness, effectiveness, etc., and are there any concerning statistics that regard this factor when it comes to policy implementation, climate change, and so on. So setting some background, and also, for example, identifying what is the primary issue or why this is important to look into, are the 2 key components of your rationale. So elaborating on these issues of relating to your chosen factor are crucial for the problem identification, establishing why this is important, is this a new issue or problem, and so on. This is definitely where you can use AI as a tool to create kind of a rough outline of maybe some potential ideas that are under each subsection, and you can kind of use that to then decide, you doing your own literature search, what do you actually have enough backing for to help you in your research question, and B, creating just general suggestions for structure, and that's what you can use the AI method for in this case. What's in also thing that is important to note is that in the course outline it mentions that they also recommend that you use some sort of newspaper article for the rationale section. So for example, you can use an article to establish a little bit more of the background or the context, or something with the problem identification. So definitely feel free to use that, but again, primarily stick to those academic articles as well. So then we have our central question as our section number 2. So our central question is where, of course, you are actually presenting what is going to be your primary focus for the paper. So your problem identification and this part essentially go hand in hand. So what is the problem? What is the background information that we have? And what are we trying to therefore look into based on this problem identification? So we want to introduce our own angle and perspective into your chosen factor. That's going to be the main focus of the paper. Some general tips about the central question is that it should be neutral and unbiased and have a defined scope, and also not be too broad. So you want to make sure that it's something that is a bit more specific, either for a particular country, time period, group of countries, businesses, governments, and so on. There's a lot of options there, again, based on what you find in the literature and what you find that piques your own interest. Terms should also be very clear and well defined. So again, make sure the readers can understand precisely what you're trying to look into with your research question. And lastly, I would really recommend that it's not a yes/no question, but rather an open one. So rather than does this policy affect the climate change or affect government considerations for climate change, yes or no? That's not a great research question. It would be better to say, to what extent does this factor play a role in the fairness regarding the situation of climate change, or regarding a specific subsection of climate change that we want to consider. So it's really important that you create this kind of open style question so that you can really explore this further on in your theoretical framework, and also, in your general conclusions for the paper. So then we have our research method and the structure of the paper. So our research method is something that we can combine with the structure of the paper. You can kind of just link them hand in hand. You don't need to spend too much time. More than a sentence doesn't really need to be necessary for the research method, because this is where you are establishing the how of addressing or justifying your research question. And that is simply, doing a review of past literature. There's no actual new experiment that you're running, for example. It's pretty straightforward, and again, as I said, it doesn't need to take more than a sentence to describe this. And then lastly, as I mentioned, you can kind of link this section or just combine this with the structure of the paper section, and that is essentially establishing what is the sequence that your paper will follow. So it's important to state the section names and describe in around 1 to 2 sentences what the sections will contain, and also actually contribute to your entire paper. So how will they contribute to finding a final answer for your research question? So your sections are basically laid out for you in the course outline, so you can just use those and establish then the structure. And again, you need to, in the introduction, establish how you are going to get your answer to your research question by the end of the paper. So create that expectation from the get-go, and then you're going to be able to have a really clear, callback moment later on. So that is going to be the introduction for your writing assignment. I hope it was helpful. Make sure, as always, to check with your tutorial teacher's requirements. If they have different suggestions, follow those. This is just generally to help you give a guide if you're still a bit stuck. Again, there will be another video about the theoretical framework that will be uploaded soon. If you are interested in studying or getting some extra exam help, then there are 2 links in the description if you're a BA or EBE student, and you can then go there and find our courses that you're able to purchase there. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you all in the